Okay, here we go. Okay. Monday, yes. Folks, we are live. We're going to be live in just a moment. Let me check all our different connections. Obviously, story in Fall River is a big deal. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit. I think our sound should be fine. There we are on X. Yes. Okay. And let me check our YouTube connection. Boom, boom, boom. And right. Oh, great. Fantastic, Roger. Glad to hear that. All right. We get a Hall of Famer. Terrific. Let me just check YouTube, although I have no reason to believe YouTube's going to be a problem. And I think it's fine. Right? Yes. As a matter of fact, it is fine. There we go. There's Debbie. Yes. There's Holly. Yes. Folks, I think we're going to do the 4:30 show today. I think so. Still working on it. But, and let me just double check. We are good. So again, 1 to 2, we're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We are live on X. And most importantly, on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. Great. Roger says YouTube is fine. Good. Well, I always like to double check it myself, but indeed. We'll talk about certainly politics this week. The suspects in Garden City being cut loose certainly caught a lot of people off guard. And great. And Gian says the audio is good. All right. Goodness. All right. We got the dream team going. All right. Let me, we're going to start in, folks, just 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and we are live. Yes. This Harriet Brown. I might do the 4:30 show. I don't know. Could be. Could be. Probably. We shall see is the real answer. Okay. But the chaos with crime, I just don't. Hi there, Brenda. Is everyone? Folks, we're going to begin. Believe it or not, we're 1 minute away. We are 1 minute away. Okay. All right, I don't think so, but we're going to find out momentarily. Yes, now the Providence Police are having an availability coming up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, which I will not be at. I will not be at, but we'll get the details from it. Can't be everywhere, folks. I've given up on that. I used to then start scrambling and saying, let me get to wherever, but no longer. If people want me somewhere, they let me know in advance. Okay. And we're going to begin on this Monday, folks. It is 1:06. And as I mentioned, We are live right now on AM 1380, 99.9 FM. Now remember, you can always listen online at the website, which is depetro.com. Right now, we're also live on our YouTube channel, which is experiencing great growth, on our Facebook page, which is also great growth, and also on X. But this portion of our program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, right now, they have delicious, fresh vegetables available, plus really good homegrown corn, fresh peaches. PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, Rhode Island's #1 garden center, located 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown, where they also have, by the way, hanging pots, moss baskets. They have unique gifts. They're open 7 days a week. Hanging impatiens, pansy, marigold bags, large selection of beautiful patio pots. Vegetable plants and herbs are available. Tropical mandevillas. Screen lumen mulch is available. Again, they're a full-scale nursery, and they grind it. They're open 7 days a week. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, folks, we have a lot of video up on our website, depetro.com. We have the Cranston Police body cam video, if you haven't seen it, when that individual started spraying gas at the Cranston Police for whatever reason. Then we also have, obviously, the most extensive coverage on what happened less than a week ago in Cranston, both the standoff and Garden City. It's a happening. Check it out. It's depetro.com. Brought to you by the Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks on the lounge, and prepared delicious meals are available in the market at Cohasset. It's right in the front of the restaurant, the Cohasset Inn. Well, folks, remember, this summer, every summer, winter, all year round, all your heating and cooling, you can depend on Propane Plus. In Rhode Island, call them 401-885-4209, and in Massachusetts, 508-252-3359. For Propane Plus heating and cooling, residential or commercial, you just go onto their website. It's propaneplus.com. They're available 24/7. Just type in your zip code. You can depend on Propane Plus. And again, a very user-friendly website. It's propaneplus.com. So, folks, on this Monday, we're going to talk to Justin Katz coming up in just a moment. Politics this week. Obviously, what happened in Fall River is a huge local story. And it also, what it kind of reminds me of, it's not exactly like the situation. It just hear me out. I want to explain a little bit of what I think is a parallel with what happened in Texas. But I did receive this. Colonel Perez is holding an availability regarding Alverson and West Friendship Street incidents. So, availability, Alverson, West Friendship Street incidents. He's going to hold an availability, share more information in an incident yesterday at 55 Alverson Street. We were out last night. I am unaware what happened. In an incident earlier this month on West Friendship Street. So it's going to be Chief Perez coming up. Now, I will not be there, but we'll get the details. But so something happened. This is, for those that watch Road Patrol Live, it's right off Broad Street. Now, we've been down West Friendship. It's right near Bridgham, West Friendship. When I'm coming, if I'm on Broad Street, it's not far from the Kentucky Fried Chicken or the Taco Bell. If you take a right, that's West Friendship. Now, earlier, just a couple of weeks ago, there was some incident. I think it was the 4th of July. Into the early morning hours of Saturday. Police were called. There were people blocking the street, loud noise. And when the Providence police went to, tell them to quiet it down. And it's my understanding they were basically saying, listen, either you're inside the house or you can't have all this loud noise. It's past 1 o'clock. And things got heated. And then some of the people in the house. And again, as I've mentioned, there's a number of people who, in media outlets that have it out, basically for the Providence police. And they use that as an opportunity to go after and make it seem as though the police were very aggressive. I want to just look on, let's see, Alverson. I'm not that familiar with Alverson. And Alverson. That one I'm not that familiar with. West Friendship and Alverson. Okay. I'm going off their press release now. It's a little bit of a problem. Alverson. All right. Where's Alverson? Oh, wow. All right. Well, Alverson Avenue is over near in the Hartford Avenue. Let's see. Alverson runs between Plainfield and also that's Hartford Avenue. So when we cut through Oneyville and then we're going into Silver Lake, Alverson is actually the north part of Silver Lake. And Alverson, then if you go up that street, I don't know what happened on that street. We'll certainly try to find out. So, but if you go straight, that hits Hartford Avenue. But I think Alverson would be considered maybe either the Hartford Avenue area or I don't think it's Silver Lake, but it's north towards the Johnston line. Well, anyhow, we're going to find out. But first, we're going to talk with Justin Katz, managing editor, anchorrising.com, politics this week. But that I am going to touch on that, I find it interesting that Governor McKee spoke out when they had some ceremony on, I think, the Cape Verdean flag. Do you remember? And then that night, we were out and I actually kind of got caught in the traffic of the Cape Verdean festival they were having by Indian Point Park. So East Providence has a big Cape Verdean population, and then we're having some flag raising, and some moron showed up and started stomping on both, I think, the American flag and the Cape Verdean flag. I don't remember. And then they chased him. And when they found him, he had a Nazi insignia, a flag in his pocket, and a knife. And Governor McKee commented on that. But he hasn't commented on the fact that less than a week ago, two pretty dangerous gang members traveled, to Garden City, stole a car out of Massachusetts, traveled to Garden City, and lay in wait for a dangerous gang member with a lengthy criminal record from Brockton, who's been laying low and staying in that area somewhere. I don't know exactly where. And then was working out at the LA Fitness. And we know one of them leapt out and fired 5 shots. Well, the gunman was released. Now, Mayor Hopkins initially said both were released. Now we've learned that just one. But why is either one of them being released? But my point is, I don't think we've heard anything from the governor regarding what I consider to be a wildly dangerous incident. Folks, this portion of our program, so we are going to touch on that, is brought to you by Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Now remember, call Corey today at 401-283-9815, and you can get a free quote. Call Corey, and what they can do is they can epoxy your garage or patio. They do decorative concrete flooring. They'll also help you fix potholes and cracks. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating now. Epoxy your garage and patio and decorative concrete flooring. It adds a lot to the value of your property. Look for them on social media, Quality Asphalt Seal Coating, or call them 401-283-9815. Well, folks, that sound means one thing. Let's bring him on. He is the managing editor of anchorrising.com. Our segment is Politics This Week, and it is Justin Katz. Good afternoon, Justin.
Good afternoon, John.
Justin, let's start off. I want to hear some of your thoughts on the coverage is what I'm most interested in, the coverage of the passing of former Governor Ed DePrete.
Well, it's been a while since he was in office, and a lot of the older time journalists have long memories of him. it's been maybe a little bit less concentrating on kind of the corruption and the bribery that to some people he kind of represents. In some ways, though, that's understandable. I mean, he's gone out, he's pulled out of public view for a long time, and I wonder how many younger Rhode Islanders even really know what he was involved in and what that represents. Although there is this legacy. I mean, he was jailed for taking bribes for public projects, and a lot of people still feel like that's part of the ongoing story, and it's kind of surprising that wouldn't surface a little bit more. That seems to be an element of state government that isn't getting as much attention maybe as it used to.
Well, he is the highest ranking elected official in this state, I believe, that's ever gone to prison. I don't think we've had any senators. You've had maybe some Congress people, that certainly flirted with it. St. Germain, certainly there were allegations with him, but an actual governor that went to prison. And I think, regardless, I just found it a little bit too much of kind of the old thing, the old adage of, other than that, how is the theater, Mrs. Lincoln? Especially last night outside the wake, there was someone that worked for him, and he was saying, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was on Channel 12. He was saying he had the same character when he was mayor as he did governor. Well done. So I find it impossible to separate. That's, to me, and I'll give you the final thought on it, but it's like part of his legacy. To me, that is the legacy. It was a terrible time of corruption. It was a state for sale. And, then that spent Jeff Pine, and they spent the 90s going after him. And then he was supposed to go on trial in 1999, and then they settled, and then he just took 1 year in jail. But I just find, I almost view him, he was different than Cianci, because Cianci went to prison, but then he had the first term, and then he had the radio career. But Governor McKee, basically, he went to the ACI and then, kind of faded from public life, other than then the big battle where the wife was trying to get part of his pension. But I think you could tell the story of Cianci, and there were other notable things that had been accomplished, but I find it very difficult to tell the DePrete story without the bottom line that you had a governor that went to jail.
Well, certainly. I mean, that's what makes him, more notable than any of passing governor of the past, several decades. And it's interesting, though, the contrast with Cianci is there are kind of two approaches that politicians can take. One is the Cianci way and just kind of brazen it out, and this is me, I'm going to be a character. And the other is to kind of quietly step back. And it seems to me he's done, DePrete did the latter a bit more, and that's maybe among the media that gives him a little bit more of an affectionate touch, which isn't justified. But I think anytime we have a reason to talk about Rhode Island's corruption, we probably should take it.
Now, Justin, a new poll is out, and it has Governor McKee at 25% approval rating. All of the statewide office holders, Congress, Senate, all down. I'm curious your thoughts on the poll. I think it's also interesting how little people have, I'm not surprised by it, have confidence that the bridge would be done in time. But you had a poll that had him at 19%. This poll has him with a 25% approval rating. What is your take on this poll regarding Governor McKee?
Well, I mean, it's not even just 25% approval; it's 64% active disapproval, which is a very like a plurality of Rhode Islanders disapprove of the governor. It's kind of surprising, and all of the, as you mentioned, all of the Democrats are underwater, are under 50% approval, except Jack Reed just barely makes the 50% mark. Magaziner has been tagged as under some concern because there's so much disapproval of him, which, upon reflection, should have been kind of obvious. He took the more moderate of Rhode Island's 2 congressional seats, and he's been one of the vocal get in the parade with the radical Democrats in Washington. So it's not surprising that he would be would be in the negative there. But one of the things I concentrated on Anchor Rising, which I thought was interesting, and this hasn't gotten much play, the poll also asked people of both parties what they thought of the other party on several kind of negative qualities, whether they're closed-minded, dishonest, unintelligent, immoral, and lazy. And what was funny was Republicans and independent voters, who are still the majority in Rhode Island, all think Democrats are more of all those things than they think Republicans are. And so there's this really distrust, not only of the particular Democrat politicians in the state, but the party itself, which raises the question, why are they still running things so well? And I think with our frequent talk about things like legislative grants and mail ballot fraud, we might have an answer to that. But that to me is kind of the theme of this poll. Nobody likes the Democrats. Even the Democrats were more negative about themselves for closed-mindedness and dishonesty than they were about Republicans in the middle range. It's just shocking that they're so dominant in the state, but we're clearly stuck with them.
I wonder, and I had said this to someone else, I wonder if, because Governor McKee, and get your thought on this, because he's so unpopular, and let's face it, right now, there's not a real reason to be enthusiastic about anything. I wonder if that is kind of, spreading across, and people are so unhappy with McKee and the bridge and how they just keep taking shots at President Trump. I wonder, Justin, if it's spreading to the other officials. So then, everyone's upset with everyone because of they're so unhappy with McKee.
I think there's a big part of it that is that. I mean, he's kind of the figurehead of the party in Rhode Island, the top Democrat, although arguably the Speaker of the House and the Senate President have as much or more power. So I think that is part of it. I think another big part of it is if you look at the questions I just mentioned, how if you think the other party is very dishonest or whatever, those people in that range are the extremists, the base of the parties. And I think that's where a lot of our politicians are focusing, especially today with social media. They're going for the likes and the follows and the clicks from people in those extreme groups. And so everybody in the middle is seeing them in a way they did not before, where they're just, the average voter turning on, popping on to X or Facebook and seeing Magaziner spouting off and marching with was it Jasmine Crockett. That's got to be a turnoff for a lot of them. I think that's another big part of it. But I think it's goes all connected. I think part of McKee's disapproval is not only his incompetence, but the fact that he's joining in with these extreme conversations in his own party. And so people have nowhere to turn for reasonable, straightforward leadership.
Here's a Channel 12 headline. Rhode Island's U.S. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse making national headline this week, hitting a milestone in his effort to urge more action by Congress to address climate change. Justin, to me, when I hear that now, to me, it's impossible to take him seriously since we learned that the wife has been getting all these federal grants for this scam that she came up with, where she's a paid consultant, and it's all about this, it's all contingent on climate change.
Yeah, well, I mean, I skimmed that story and I didn't see any mention of the wife. You
No.
would think that would be a very prominent part of it. His 113th or 13 years he's been at this, and his wife's been making millions from it. You'd think that'd be a big part of the story. The other thing that strikes me about it is he's been doing this for 13 years. You'd think if his threats were about the environment were accurate, he could say, when I started these speeches, the temperature was 10 degrees lower, or the ocean, my beach club in Newport had 30 feet more beach, but he can't because it hasn't changed that much. And I think that's one of the reasons people are getting skeptical of environmental alarmism is because you have these examples. You've been saying this for 13 years. The movement itself has been saying things like this for 50 years. Where is the change? Where is the danger? It's not manifesting, but it's still treated as a milestone. I mean, well, what else has he done? Shouldn't we be saying it's not a milestone, but an indication of how little he's actually doing? Is this what we have a senator for, while we give him all this money and attention and have big elections every 6 years for senators? Is that why we're doing it? So he can do another 6 years of speeches on the floor? It's kind of embarrassing, if you ask me.
I think it is embarrassing. A milestone, as you're right. A milestone of what? Of no action? And I don't know how they do the story without mentioning the controversy involving the wife, Sandra Whitehouse. We learned, she pocketed millions through this, quote, not an employee, just a consultant. And I mean, to me, it's a scam. Now, Justin, we also learned, and Channel 12, I believe, broke this story, that on late Friday, Governor McKee set up the Amica Pavilion, formerly the Civic Center, formerly the Dunkin' Donuts Center, but to tour for potentially, I guess there's a WNBA team in Connecticut, and they play at Mohegan Sun, and they're looking at maybe relocating the team. Now, there are some possibilities. I believe, if I understand this, the team initially was in the South. They moved it up here. They are looking at Hartford. But what is your take on, apparently the governor went over and they did, a full tour of individuals that are potentially looking at Providence as a site for a WNBA team?
It's one of those stories that gives me sort of the beaten spouse syndrome, where once the politicians, the governors, start coming out and going, "Oh, we're doing a tour. We might bring the WNBA." Well, first of all right, I don't know how many people actually care about that, but whatever. But when I hear that, and then I see that it has to do with an investor who's buying the team, is shopping around, it starts to make me think that the governor is preparing to give a big handout, some kind of subsidy to this investor who will back his investment, and so that he brings the team here, and the governor will get a couple headlines he can put in a commercial when he wants to go on to his next political run or whatever it might be. It's just, it seems to me this is not what our governor should be doing with his time, is touring the basketball stadium, trying to help investors find somewhere to make a bigger profit. But that's what we've come to expect from Rhode Island politicians.
To me, this is right up, like Governor McKee. He wished this was his entire job, was doing this type of thing. If everything else was running smoothly, I would think, wow, that would be big to have a professional franchise based right here. Now, I think they're also potentially looking at Boston, but I think it's reasonable to be skeptical that when they're not just being used as a stalking horse of, they'll take all the information and then go to Boston or Hartford and say, well, look what Rhode Island's offering us. Look what Providence is offering. Again, anytime the WNBA does seem to be gaining in popularity, Caitlin Clark has done a lot. I'm not trying to, knock that, but at the same time, you just wonder if they're just, as I said, being used as a stalking horse to kind of the way Bob Kraft did. He wanted a new stadium in Foxborough. He used Connecticut, he even used Providence a little bit in order to kind of get a better deal for himself. The one thing that does give me hesitancy about it is, and I don't mean in a bad way, but is I believe one of the people potentially involved is the owner of Seven Stars Bakery, and that is without question, been successful. But I view it as, boy, I would hope something like that would be true. It would be good for the downtown. It'd be good for the region to actually have a professional team instead of everything's the Patriots and the Celtics and the Red Sox and the Bruins. But I'm with you. I'm a little skeptical on it. Now, I'm also curious, Justin, just your thought on, another passing of a labor leader. And again, all the tributes flow in. Arthur Coyer, he was involved with the controversy with Bill Clinton. He got golf clubs, and he was involved with some controversy involving a Ferrari. The father is Labor's International. But I'm just curious your thought. To me, it's another example that when one of these labor leaders die, they're treated as like statesmen. And believe me, Labor's International, they had a pretty rough and tumble reputation, and still do for a very, very long time.
What's interesting is that there's this strange disconnect between how powerful, especially in Rhode Island, how powerful these labor unions are, and how they're portrayed and how they're treated. We've talked about, say, Patrick Crowley getting on TV to talk about Labor Day, the representative of the worker, as if he's just some friendly nonprofit leader. And there's really that strange disconnect when it comes to labor. And I think you see that when one of them dies, and you get the kind of the panegyrics coming in.
Now, folks, it's time for Katz's Corner, and this is a story that Justin has found. And Justin, what do you have for us this week?
Well, this is one thing to watch for Rhode Island. The One Big Beautiful Bill passed in Washington. And included in that is a provision a lot of people on the right side of the aisle were looking for national school choice. So basically, what can happen? Anybody can give $1,700, get a tax credit from the federal government on their federal taxes, give it to an organization that will fund tuitions to private schools for usually for students who need the money or what have you. The trick is the bill requires state approval. And so what this sets up, where even though the state of Rhode Island technically is not directly involved in the transaction, they get to decide, can Rhode Islanders participate in this? And it reminds me of how I once wanted to sign up for a Beer of the Month club, and I couldn't because Rhode Island government had decided I couldn't get beer from another state in the mail. And so that's kind of what this is, only with education. And so what I'm hoping is people out there will start to notice this and maybe get involved and prepare some advocacy to tell our elected officials, just let us do this. Of course, they don't want to, because the more choice people have, the less they'll choose government schools, and the less our local labor unions, with one of their heads as the Senate president, the less they'll get to just grab everybody and blame lack of finances. So I hope there's advocacy for that, and I hope Rhode Island does the right thing and allows us this opportunity, but we'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, but that is an excellent point. Folks, again, check it out on anchorrising.com. He is Justin Katz. Again, our segment Politics this week. Justin, excellent as always, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you, John. Everybody have a great week.
All right, folks, there it is. Justin Katz in our segment Politics this week. Now, I am going to talk about the situation with Garden City, and I'll also touch on this situation in Fall River that is obviously a horrible, horrible story. This portion of the program, hey, there was a bad fire last night. And remember, if you ever have a fire or you have water damage or maybe mold, ServPro of Providence. Call them today, 401-941-5500. ServPro of Providence. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional. ServPro of Providence. Suddenly, fire, disaster strikes. What do? They're available 24/7. ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. Now, this is obviously a horrible situation that happened last night. You know, just so if I had I went to sleep right away. I had a busy day, busy weekend. I was exhausted. I went to bed like really early. I started watching something close to 9:30, and I totally dozed off. Otherwise, I would have been at this. But 9 dead, 30 hospitalized, 5-alarm fire, Fall River Assisted Living Facility. Folks, it's just so horrible. But what I also, I started to, some of the things that I've read about it, they're already starting to question why weren't Governor Healy pledges to offer support assistance, senior residents, the deadly Fall River fire. Some of the things they're already questioning are maybe that sprinklers weren't working. Some of the things they're asking is maybe smoke alarms were not working. I don't, this is, to me, that's why I started to say it was just a disaster. They described a chaotic scene. They were rescued from the blaze. 9 dead, more injured. I mean, broke windows trying to escape. Governor Healy, full investigation into the cause of the fire and the response. But again, were there smoke alarms not working? Were there sprinklers that were not working? People began yelling, banging on windows to get out. Some displaced residents stood outside smoking cigarettes. Workers from the assisted living hugged them or asked them how they were doing. One woman lived there for 6 years, sitting in a walker, was outside sitting in a walker smoking with another resident. She said around 9:30, she was outside with 4 other residents. Smoke was everywhere. Fire was shooting out of the AC unit. All the lights were flashing, people banging on the windows. I kept saying, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't know, but what I was starting to say was, you know, the more you've heard, this should be a warning to me. Every assisted living facility, every place like this, not just in Fall River, not just in Massachusetts, but there's a reason why There's someone that's supposed to go around and inspect sprinkler systems and smoke alarms. And what is the plan? Should there be some kind of a catastrophe? The reason I mentioned Texas is the more, and I recognize the president was trying to say this is not the time to ask questions, but the more you learn about the flood in Texas, and you had a river basin that apparently climbed 22 feet in 45 minutes, and the river basin known as like Flood Alley. And then when they showed that camp, and they had very young children camping 500 feet from where the river was. My point is that to me is an example. In hindsight, you shouldn't have anyone like that close. And as far as the investigation in Texas, you're hearing, I heard a 911 call, and the woman said the person that can authorize the sirens going off, they're not around, and they're the only ones that can sign off on that. I think it's a time that there are people, and it's their job to make sure, that camp counselor who apparently drowned trying to save people. But in hindsight, the way the camp is designed, is there anyone now that thinks it's a good idea to have cabins 500 feet from where the river is if they know that river can flood quickly? I think obviously the answer now would be no. Now, I don't know enough about Fall River. I did see a story where they were questioning, is it possible some sprinklers didn't work? How come some smoke alarms were maybe not working? I don't know enough about that facility. But when you step back in this day and age, and this home, where obviously the people staying there need help, I'll be very curious to see how this is going to shake out. I mean, 9 dead, 1 is in critical condition, 5-alarm fire broke out. So heavy flame, multiple people, dozen people rescued by ladder. That could have been much more. 30 taken area hospitals, various injuries, a dozen rescued by ladder. That's the first responders. 5 firefighters also treated minor injuries. 70 people lived at the facility. An area had been set up at the chapel, St. Anne's Hospital, families reunite. Building is clear. We've turned it over to the owner, dealing with the insurance company, crew boarding up the doors and windows. Mayor Paul Coogan said one of the issues now is getting medicine to 35 residents who were brought to this center. 20 of the residents brought temporary home for the remaining 15. I mean, when you have 70 people that clearly need help, I mean, that sounds just horrific. People banging on the windows. Again, I want to come back to whose responsibility was it to check the sprinklers? Whose responsibility was it to check the smoke alarm, the smoke detectors? You know what I mean? Obviously, the people are smoking outside, so you can't smoke inside. One's in critical condition, 30 in the hospital, so that could climb. They still don't know exactly what happened. You would think people were hanging out of the windows screaming for help. You would think that that they would have cameras set up in a place like this. 70 people lived there. Cause of the fire was under investigation. But you would think that with this type of facility that they would 55 firefighters called to the scene. You would think that they would have cameras, smoke detectors, sprinklers in this day and age. We're gonna have to wait and see on that. I don't understand. But I think some people, for whatever reason, there's a false sense of security. There's a false sense of like that type of thing can't happen, and it can happen. I'm going to talk about Garden City in just a moment, but folks, I want to remind you, now we had a lot of people had roof damage recently with that storm on July 3rd, the night before the 4th. Remember, Roofco, Rhode Island. Call them today for a free quote, 401 868 7149. Roofco, Rhode Island. Wind damage, leaky roof, missing, lifted, or curled shingles, granules in the gutter. You can depend on Roofco, Rhode Island. They'd be happy to inspect your roof for wind damage or give you a free estimate. Call Joe today at Roofco, Rhode Island, 401 868 7149. Now, I share their social media, their Facebook page. If you're listening or watching on this Monday, there's a very good chance that your roof, which, by the way, a new roof immediately improves the value of the building, of your home, of your business. Roofco, Rhode Island, 401 868 7149. But there's a very good chance that if you've got wind damage, that you're covered and you get a brand new roof. Call them for a free estimate. Let them go up. Check it out. 401 868 7149. They'd be happy to inspect your roof for wind damage, give you a free estimate. Roofco, Rhode Island, 401 868 7149. Now, regarding the situation in Garden City, and that was less than a week ago. Folks, again, good afternoon on this Monday. I wish I had some good news for you. I don't. That Fall River story sounds like a horror film. I don't understand how something like that, how it spread so fast. How does that happen? How are there not more alarms? It should have been immediately a smoke alarm going off. I'll be very curious to hear how that whole thing played out. But let's talk about Garden City and where we are right now with the state. And I meant to mention that also to Justin, but last Wednesday, as we were at the armed standoff in Cranston on Warwick Avenue, which was bad enough. Someone had allegedly committed an armed robbery in Pawtucket, was hiding out or staying on Warwick Avenue in Cranston, right between Ferncrest and Henry Street, right across from the Hendricken bus stop, right near Park Avenue. So police go to serve a warrant. Well, while they're dealing with that, Garden City, 2 individuals show up, known to police, extensive criminal records, known gang members. They show up at Garden City. Now, Tuesday night, allegedly, they stole a vehicle in Massachusetts, drove it to Garden City on Wednesday morning, and they're sitting right out there in the parking lot. I was actually there this morning. Cranston police have a police car. I don't blame them, sitting right there in the lot at LA Fitness. So those 2 individuals, they're sitting there, and suddenly they see the target come out. And it's an individual that they're looking for, and he's from Brockton. And again, extensive criminal history, known very dangerous gang member, and apparently working out inside of LA Fitness and staying somewhere in that area. We don't know exactly. I mean, there's so many different places someone like that could be staying within a 5-minute drive to Garden City. They could be staying in Warwick, right over near, over near the mall. They could be staying in Cranston. They could be staying somewhere off Pontiac Avenue. Who knows? They could be staying on Cranston Street. But anyhow, they're coming out of LA Fitness, and then suddenly, as you've seen in the video, one of them, with the black ski mask, jumps out and fires 5 shots. Now, that was all premeditated. Police believe they stole the vehicle with the intention of using that as the getaway car. And apparently, by the way, those Kia cars are very easy to steal because that was the car that they stole. So they steal one of those, they wait. The guy jumps out, fires 5 shots. The other one waits, and then they speed off. And then immediately a be on the lookout goes out, and I'm not exactly sure how, where they entered 95. They somehow got on 95. Now, there's different ways there because you could go the light right there at Garden City, which also would actually put you on 295, Route 37 first. Or they could have gone down Reservoir Avenue. I don't know. But I think they went up around and jumped on 95. And a state trooper saw them going on 95 South. And then I believe the chase went to Route 10. But anyhow, they caught them at the Providence Place Mall in the garage with the weapon. But they're now, yesterday, Mayor Hopkins posted he was disgusted that they made bail. Now, since then, I've heard that only one of them made bail. But folks, again, why are either one of them making bail? That situation could have been so much worse in Garden City. Not only executed him, let's just say maybe if he was on his phone. I mean, you can see the video. We have it up on DePietro.com. And he's strolling along. Now, he suddenly senses, number one, that there's a vehicle sitting over to his right. And number two, as he's coming closer, he sees someone with a black ski mask. And immediately he backtracks and runs. If that individual had waited just 2 more seconds, he actually would have passed them. What if he had been on his phone and he wouldn't have even seen them? Or maybe, whatever. He was talking to someone, could have been talking to someone. Maybe he met someone in the gym and they're walking out together. But that easily, if it had gone according to plan, goes up, bang, bang, right? He's out. Or when he's spraying, it could have hit innocent bystanders. How is that? See, this is the problem. There's a problem that someone can do that to me and be out on bail. But why is that? That person should not be out on bail. There's no comment from Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee. As I said, he commented when that idiot stomped on a flag and Governor McKee issued a statement condemning it, which I'm not knocking that. But in comparison, I mean, some idiot stomping on a flag and someone firing 5 rounds at 11:45 in the morning in Garden City, outside of LA Fitness and the Verizon store, it's not even close. Silent. There's nothing. Nothing. You know what else I want to touch on is some people don't get it. When I say, when I mention that it's a sanctuary state, hear me out, because I do see people, and I want to tell you so you can also address some of these people that put comments. But folks, first, I want to remind you, if you, right now, are you thinking of redoing your kitchen? Are you possibly thinking of redoing your bathroom or a bathroom? Maybe you're thinking of a new deck, or you'd like to remodel your home. Arch Design Builders. I'm offering you, I am, free estimate with the dream team, Ed and Roxanne, Arch Design Builders. Whether it's a brand new kitchen, maybe brand new bathroom, basement, deck, special project, call them right now. Set up that meeting with my friends, Ed and Roxanne at Arch Design Builders, 401-207-4124. I share their social media, Arch Design Builders. This is high-end, custom build, the best customer service. Ed and Roxanne work as the team. Call, set up that meeting, and let's dream. Show them the space, and let them tell you what they can do. 401-218-9707 for Arch Design Builders. When I mention sanctuary state, a lot of people don't get that. When you have a sanctuary state, you're operating under lawlessness. You're operating where, when you run a sanctuary state, which this Rhode Island is, denies it, the elected officials deny it. When you are basically running and they consider a sanctuary state, it's an element of lawlessness. And what I mean by that is You're surrounded by people that everyone accepts they're breaking the law. Everyone accepts that they're many times getting cash under the table, many times that they're not paying taxes. They're surrounded by people that are not living legally. And I believe it spreads. Now, there's a lot of downsides. People that are living illegally, number one, they tend to be victimized. They get ripped off. Number two, they don't call the police. Number three, they don't complain if their kids get hassled in school because they're not even supposed to be there in the first place. You breed an air of lawlessness, and that's what McKee does. Now, as I started to say, who in their right mind right now thinks that the quality of life is better under Governor McKee right now? This is insanity. Gang members trying to execute each other in broad daylight in Garden City. This isn't midnight in Garden City. This isn't 2 a.m. somewhere in South Providence. This isn't 3 in the morning in Pawtucket or Central Falls. This is 11:45 a.m. as some people are going to Avio to meet for an early lunch. Broad daylight, Garden City. Bang, bang, bang. 5 shots. If that guy had practiced once, he could have been able to pull it off. It would have been a broad daylight. He was going to be executed. I have no idea. I don't know if the guy, the target, was armed. I would imagine he had access to firearms. I don't know. Maybe he dropped his bag. No comment from Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee. None. It's sanity. Where does this end? I'll tell you where it's going to end. Is something like that's going to happen in a prominent person or someone related to a prominent person. Easily could have gone wrong. Easily could have gone wrong. What if somebody came out of the Verizon store? Bang, bang, bang. Who knows who that could have been? I was at Garden City this morning. I like the sneaker store there. It's right down. It's 2 down or 3 down, whatever, from Verizon. No comment. And they let them out on bail. Don't you understand? And I know, so someone connected to the judge is like, the judge had no choice and blah, blah, blah. Do you hear anyone speaking up that maybe they ought to change the law? That maybe someone that commits an act like that doesn't, I mean, the bail is not that hard because then you only got to put down a certain percentage. So it's not like you got to come up with the full thing. Full amount is what I meant. Insanity. Ridiculous. But like I just don't know where this is leading because I also hear silence. I don't hear people speaking out. Justin Katz and myself, if you just heard, Politics This Week, every single week we talk about the scam they do with mail ballots. But no one does anything. No one does anything in Smith Hill. No one does anything at the Rhode Island State House. We talk about it I talk about how Rhode Island is an outlier with mail ballots, different than Massachusetts and Connecticut, much different. But no one at the State House talks about it. Do you see the disconnect? In all the Republicans at the Rhode Island State House, I get it. They went to the wall on the gun bill. What good did that do them? When Ruggiero was never showing up for the session, I even posted, why doesn't the Senate Minority Leader, Jessica De La Cruz, why doesn't she say, this is crazy, he's not here, he can't do the job? And Kathy Gregg of the Journal said one reason, guns, because, he gave her his word there wouldn't be any movement on restrictions with firearms. Well, he died. And look what just happened. You can't trust them. Something should be done about the mail ballots and the ballot harvesting. It's the only reason McKee is running for re-election. Do you see the disconnect? He is somewhere between a 19% approval rating and a 25%. 19% approval rating. That means 80 81% of the state don't want him to be the governor. And he's running for re-election. Why? Because of the mail ballots. Because they're confident that they're going to be able to manipulate the mail ballots. Not he's going to have a policy that's going to put him over the top. Not that he's going to have a better campaign. Not that he's going to have an award-winning message. Not that he's going to have breakthrough legislation. Not that he's going to do anything to make your life better. He's only running because they're confident they can manipulate the mail ballots. Does that sound like democracy? And no one says anything. All due respect to Leader Chippendale, Senate Minority Leader De La Cruz, I don't get it. It kind of begins and ends there. Because then you know what's going to happen next year? Unless something is done, what do you think happens next fall? A new slate of Republicans run. Governor, maybe against Magaziner, maybe against Gabe Amo, maybe against Senator Reid, maybe it's all the, the big ones, the congressional and the statewide, Attorney General, Secretary of State. And what do you think is going to happen? They're going to lose. They're going to lose because of the ballot harvesting. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by J. Perry Paving. Now remember, if you would you like your driveway paved? Great. J. Perry Paving, free estimate, any project. They have a great package for veterans. Call them today, 401-732-1730. 401-732-1730, letter J, J. Perry Paving. Maybe is it possible, is your dad a veteran, or your mom a veteran, or your grandmother, or your grandfather, or your son or daughter, or uncle, boyfriend? You get the general idea. J. Perry, letter J, J. Perry Paving, they have a special package for veterans. 401-732-1730. How much is it going to cost you to get an estimate where they come out and look at the project? Free estimate. I'm glad you asked that question. J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. Well, folks, good afternoon. Boy, it's muggy out, isn't it? It's very muggy out. Tonight, we'll see on Road Patrol Live. I don't know. I am curious. Providence Police are having an availability coming up at 2 o'clock. Apparently, there was some incident in the Hartford Avenue area yesterday. I do not know what that's about. Then we're all going to find out at 2 o'clock. But it sounds as though some individuals are being aggressive towards the Providence Police. I think so. And, what's missing now is, if you notice, look at the aggression they're having towards ICE on the West Coast. The Democrat Party encourages aggression towards police. That can't be denied. They do. So we'll see what that's all about. All right, listen, if you're listening to the radio, I want you to stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. Everyone else, I don't think we're going to do the 4:30 today. I think tomorrow. 4:30 tomorrow. But tonight, I believe we're going to be out on Road Patrol Live. We'll see with this muggy weather. It feels like a thunderstorm could hit at any minute. All right, listen, everyone. Enjoy this Monday. If you listen to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news.